Fresh meat.
They will come looking for me soon. They won't find me alive. Just my story and my gun. All I need is a single bullet. I just need to share my story before I go. It all seemed to change on my 18th birthday. I woke up as I did every morning, not particularly excited for the day. I'd been alone since I ran from my abusive home at 16.
Hungry.
I went down and started breakfast. I pulled the bacon out to fry while I scrambled some eggs. I finished making breakfast and that first bite of egg was unlike anything I've ever tasted. The most putrid taste filled my mouth. The eggs weren't rotten, I knew that for a fact. I tried another bite with pretty much the same result. That would end up being the last time I ever ate eggs. The toast was next, and it was just like sour, soggy cardboard. The last thing on my plate was the bacon. I was just so hungry I had to try. I took a tentative bite and knew immediately it was the best thing I'd ever tasted. The best thing ever, period. I've had bacon before, of course, but this was different. It just melted in my mouth, leaving me on the verge of absolute euphoria.
Hungry.
A little voice in my head said so quietly I could barely hear it myself. As if on cue, a loud growl erupted from my abdomen. I could feel the hunger, gnawing at the middle of my gut, acting as if I hadn't eaten in days. I fried more bacon and before I knew it, I'd devoured a whole pound. After eating my fill, I was suddenly so exhausted. I couldn't remember a time in my life I'd felt so drowsy. I curled up on the couch and drifted off within a few seconds.
Hungry.
The words continued to tumble through my head as I awoke to find it dark outside. I must have slept the rest of the day away. From the pit of my stomach came a familiar and tremendous growl, a call for more food.
Hungry.
The voice in my head chanted as once again an intense stab of hunger spread through the middle of my gut. I headed to the kitchen and found a pound of hamburger. I began to form it into patties and ended up using a whole pound once they got frying. I made my buns up after it all finished frying and then took my seat on the couch in front of the TV. I took a bite of the burger, forgetting all about the breakfast experience that morning. The bun, much like the toast, tasted like moldy and soggy cardboard. The hunger pains began to grow intense. I wasted no time pulling off the buns, opting to eat just the meat, since that seemed to work that morning. Just like the bacon, the hamburger melted in my mouth and that euphoric feeling returned. The pain in my stomach decreased immensely. I left the couch to retrieve the patties and scarfed them down in record time. Once again, the overwhelmingly tired feeling returned. This time, I made it to my room and slept the next 16 hours. After that, the theme of waking up in ravenous agony repeated. Day after day, week after week. Eventually, all I ate was cooked meat. Poultry, pork, beef, whatever I could get my hands on at the grocery store. Years went by without any issues. The little voice in my head always reminding me.
Hungry.
On my 25th birthday, I woke up as usual, voraciously hungry. I cooked my pound of bacon, but today was different as I was planning on meeting my girlfriend of 4 years later on, and was going to propose to her. I sat in front of my TV to enjoy my breakfast. I took a bite of my bacon, expecting the same euphoric feeling I had always felt and had grown accustomed to. At that point, I had learned that if I snacked in between meals, I suffered no crash and no hunger pains. But that day, the bacon tasted as the eggs did all those years ago, putrid, rancid, and just disgusting. I was unsure what to do next. Through trial and error, I had found out that meat was the only thing I could stand to eat. But now that didn't seem to be the case. I went into the kitchen with the thought that a change from pork to chicken might be the answer. Then I saw a package of uncooked bacon.
Hungry, hungry, hungry.
Without a second thought, I grabbed the pound of bacon, tearing through its packaging like a rabid animal on the verge of starvation, and pulled out a strip of the raw meat. I shoved the whole piece in my mouth, and that euphoric feeling came back in my gut, spreading throughout the rest of my body.
Hungry, hungry, hungry.
The voice was back, though more quiet this time around. I continued to shovel chewy strips in my mouth, and then suddenly, I'd finished a whole pound, raw. I was shocked and more than a little unsure of how to process my seemingly ever-changing appetite. I sat there and thought for a little while, not realizing the time, when my phone ringing finally broke the trance I was in. It was my girlfriend. Despite the strange bacon hiccup, the rest of the day went as planned. She even said yes. After a few odd dinners and even more odd conversation, my now wife seemed to understand, even accept my eating habits. Or so she thought. I managed to choke down a few bites of dinner every night while pushing the rest around my plate for show. She always seemed to buy it. A few more years passed with no incident. Raw meat was the only thing that tasted good anymore. I kept a frozen stock full in my storage locker my wife didn't know about. My 32nd birthday rolled around. My wife and I had been happily married for 5 years. Our daughter was due any day.
Hungry, hungry, hungry.
The voice willed me out of bed one morning, my wife sleeping soundly next to me. I went and snuck a pound of some kind of meat before she woke up. The raw meat now taking on the same taste that the cooked had years ago, the same that the eggs had on my 18th birthday. It all tasted the same now. I was lost, unable to process this change or think about what I was supposed to eat now. I stepped outside for some fresh air, and then I saw it. A small rabbit hopping around in the backyard.
Hungry, hungry, hungry.
Fueled by pure animal instinct and insatiable hunger, I was across the yard with my teeth sunk into it before I could realize what was happening. Afterwards, I put its bones, sucked clean, into a paper grocery bag I found in the garage and disposed of them in a dumpster a ways from my house. Then after another few weeks of trial and error, this time of the hunting kind, I found that rabbits, squirrels, and occasional garden snakes were enough to get me by, while continuing to keep my wife fooled. But I always worried about how much longer I could keep my new meal choice a secret. Our daughter was born. She was beautiful, named Sophia after my wife's mother. The voice in my head continued still. It woke me up at night.
Hungry, hungry, hungry.
I found myself mindlessly walking into my daughter's room more and more often. I refused to hold her. My wife had no idea why. How could I tell her?
Hungry, hungry, hungry.
Last night the voice woke me up. On autopilot, I wandered into my daughter's room. She was 6 months old and I couldn't possibly love her more.
Hungry, 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 hungry.
I'm so sorry. I just couldn't help it. I was powerless to stop it, and she was just so sweet. I'm so sorry.